Oftentimes, you'll hear atheists claim that if God existed, there would certainly be no evil such as massacres, wars, child abuse, cancer, and what have you. Now, the problem of evil is a serious and complex one, and I will certainly not be able to cover all its aspects in one single video. But the one thing you will learn in this video is why it is the height of inconsistency for an atheist to even talk about the problem of evil. That's because, on the assumption of atheism, the notion that there is a dichotomy between good and evil is as delusional as the notion that green unicorns and pink dragons race against each other around planet Earth. This is Lucas from Deflate, countering the skeptics' objections to Christianity. If you're new here, click that subscribe button to get our upcoming videos. So let's start with a couple of basics. On atheism, we are just one among the many thousands of species which evolved from that one common ancestor cell which crawled out of the prebiotic soup some 4 billion years ago. That is, just like snails, rats, sharks, and butterflies, we fight for survival as described by Darwin's beautiful theory of evolution. Now, of course, somewhere along the way, we miraculously picked up a mind, language, the capacity to create art, literature, and music, but never mind, we're just another species more or less on par with guinea pigs, mushrooms, and chimpanzees. That's why Rationality Rules would frequently start his video like this.
Why hello my fellow apes, I hope that you're well.
Now, what is interesting is that atheists usually don't complain about there being a problem of evil in the animal kingdom. I mean, I have never heard anyone talking about humpback whales committing atrocities when swallowing tons of krill. Nor have I ever heard an atheist being outraged at the fact that among certain kinds of apes, males unjustly commit rape and infanticide when they copulate with females by force and kill off their offspring. Why the silence? Well, you know, when whales eat krill, they're just fighting for survival. And when male apes force themselves on females and kill their kids, well, they're just propagating their genes. That's simply the beauty of natural selection taking its wondrous course, as Darwin said. So from whales and apes back to us humans, though again, according to Rationality Rules and his fellow atheists, there is no real difference anyway. Now here's the rub. Atheists claim that we are just another kind of animal, fighting for survival. However, when apes in the jungle kill babies and force themselves on their females, atheists are happy to put this into the magic trunk of Darwin's evolution, as their never-questioned dogma which supposedly explains everything. That's nature taking its course according to the priests and popes of atheism, and Dawkins's followers are of course more than happy to blindly believe it. However, when they see the same thing happening among human apes, they ditch natural selection and the fight for survival and suddenly start ranting about evil instead. Now, how does this make any sense? Are we animals or are we not? Well, welcome to the twisted logic of Irrationality Rules and his fellow apes. Now, to be fair, some atheists are at least rational enough to recognize that none of this makes any sense. And so they try to fix up the situation a little bit. They would say that though we're animals, similar to those raping apes, evolution has miraculously endowed us with a sense of what is good and evil, as a helpful adaptation for our species to thrive and survive, even though clearly there is no such thing as good and evil, but there's only the illusion of it, which we took on in the process of evolution. In fact, some of the most respectable atheist philosophers make exactly these claims, such as Michael Ruse, who says, "Ethics, as we understand it, is an illusion fobbed off on us by our genes to get us to cooperate. Morality, or more strictly, our belief in morality, is merely an adaptation put in place to further our reproductive ends." And so we come full circle. On atheism, evil does not actually exist, other than as a figment of our imagination. That's why when atheists complain about things like genocide, war crimes, or the problem of evil in general, they're basically complaining about something which, according to them, should be taken as seriously as the flying spaghetti monster. The notion that this could be considered a rational position by any stretch of the imagination must be, I guess, one of the dogmas atheists simply embrace with blind faith. And by the way, you don't have to take my word for what I just said, because what's telling is that it is atheist philosophers themselves who have admitted that on the assumption that atheism is true, their position on the issues of justice and evil are as inconsistent as anything could be. I mean, pick Bertrand Russell, for example, who, while advocating for human rights, also confessed that what he's doing does not make any sense, given that he is also an atheist. Or Joel Marx, an atheist philosopher who says, "I have long been laboring under an unexamined assumption, namely that there is such a thing as right and wrong. I now believe there isn't. I became convinced that atheism implies amorality." He goes on to say that believers are correct. Without God, there is no morality. In other words, on atheism, talking about right and wrong, as well as good and evil, is inconsistent nonsense. So as long as you believe that all there is in the universe are atoms and biomolecules, which evolution has miraculously, by the wave of a magic wand, turned into apple trees, raping apes, and Homo sapiens, then you have no reason to suppose that good and evil actually exist, other than as an illusory figment of our imagination. And why would anyone care about illusions? That would be as rational as getting all worked up about whether the non-existing green unicorn or the non-existing pink dragon is winning the non-happening competition around planet Earth. On the other hand, if you actually want to affirm that evil is not just an illusory problem, but a real one, you have to allow for the existence of something that transcends both nature and humanity. Something which makes the notion of good and evil plausible. A God who created human beings not as another kind of animal fighting for survival, but as creatures with intrinsic value and dignity is a pretty good start and candidate for that. For lots of good reasons that I will not get into in this video now. And so on the assumption of theism, evil can be consistently talked about as a real problem. This leaves atheists with the following trilemma. The first option they have is to be philosophically consistent, become moral nihilists, and stop talking about the non-existing problem of evil. This leads to a rather bleak kind of existence, but has at least some integrity to it. Second option, they keep complaining about evil with the painful awareness of their irrationality, as they are complaining about something which, in their worldview, is nothing but an illusion. And the third option, atheists may admit that evil is actually real, while also admitting that they have to ditch their atheism to make this claim in the first place. This, of course, is scary, considering the dogmatic fervor with which atheists try to defend their position. In a nutshell, what all of this means is exactly what I said at the beginning. Atheists who talk about the problem of evil are, according to them, engaging in self-delusional gibberish about what doesn't exist in the first place. In contrast, any atheist who wants to actually engage in rational and coherent talk about real evil cannot do so unless he or she assumes that God exists. So, is evil evidence that God doesn't exist, as atheists so often claim? Far from it. If anything, by bringing up the problem of evil, atheists actually end up deflating their own atheism all by themselves. So thank you. I'm happy to take that. I guess the fact that atheists who are supposedly all about evidence end up arguing the case for God when bringing up their biggest objection against him may itself be taken as good evidence for the rationality of belief in God. Have a good one, and see you in the next episode.